Hello, this is Positive Vibes Enterprise, and the subject today is hard spiritual work. And I am Tom Goodwin, and this is Michelle Ronquillo.
Hi, everybody.
And sometimes people think, oh, we don't have to work really hard. Working really hard, it's not that effective because you can still like be smart, and then you don't have to work as hard. Well, what I say is, in order to work really hard, you have to do it smartly. You have to understand and know what you're doing, or you can't work really hard. In other words, at a certain point, you're going to start messing up because you don't know what you're doing. So you won't be working hard. In order to work hard, you have to be able to not get distracted by not knowing what you're doing.
Yes, and that all comes from training and focus and understanding what your goals are and doing it step by step so you really understand 100% where you're going and what your focus is.
And how can we deal with the really rough, challenging reality we have if we can't handle really, really hard work? And that is what builds spiritual character, spiritual backbone, is being able to deal with life at its roughest, life at its most challenging. And that's what my sort of life has been all about, developing spiritual training techniques that will challenge me in the roughest way possible. And why would I be motivated like that? Well, a lot to do with my motivation is you see, I was born different and I couldn't fit into the work market. So a lot of people would say, well, you just don't try hard enough, Tom. You don't work hard enough. You're not really applying yourself. That's why you're not fitting in. You really haven't put in the effort to fit in. And so part of my motivation was to be able to push myself harder spiritually than anybody that would question me in that area. So when they would go at me and say, you don't work hard enough, I would come back at them and express myself in a way that I work harder than you possibly ever could work and put them on the defensive. And I like to turn the table on people because people are always trying to push their version of reality onto me. And I figured I'd get a better version of reality, and I trained myself really hard, which would test my version of reality under stress. And then I would reverse it on them. All of a sudden, they'd find themselves dealing with my reality dominating on their reality, and it's going to shock them because it would be a reality they never experienced before because I developed it on my own, and I made it able to handle more than the ones that are out there.
I think that in life, that traumas that come upon us and situations and hardships that make us weak and want to crumble are those sparks of where this resiliency lies within you to grab it and train it and survive and become a hard worker spiritually by not crumbling under pressure, not crumbling under so many things in life hitting you at once. Where the warriors stand strong in the midst of battle, that is strong, that is strength, that is courage and bravery that really matter mentally. And that is hard work behind it. That is training yourself. That is motivating to keep the balance and not delude yourself with things of grandeur or even a belief system that can make you go in the opposite direction of where your spirit is supposed to be going.
Um, and now I was in the Navy and I went through boot camp. And the boot camp, when I experienced boot camp, I saw a sadistic side to it, a negative side to it. So, but they were trying to develop warriors that would not question and would just follow orders. And so they didn't design it necessarily perfectly if it was going to be a spiritual training program. And of course, in a violent world, when you're trying to get people to act violent and not think and just respond that way, You're going to tend to have not the most perfect training program for developing the most moral character. So our military is not perfect in that area, but I did go through it. I was in the Navy and I did go through boot camp. So you deal with somebody that has military experience here and that, put in my time for my country. So that's just an interesting sideline about me.
Yes, and it also shows the strength because of the routine and dedication that it takes in boot camp. And every military man and woman out there can recognize with Tom's hard resilience and training when it comes to discipline of the mind.
And by the way, I made it through by the thin. It really was a fine line for me to even make it through it, but I made through it, and I had to use my spiritual energy to help me out in that situation. In other words, I wouldn't have made it if I didn't have some extra help from the spiritual to get me through it. I would, it was one of these. I've been on the edge a lot in my life, and at that time, I wasn't heavily into the spiritual in the way I am now, but I was being pushed to the edge before I even really got extremely hot, heavy into the spiritual. And in a sense, when you're pushed to the edge when you're young, you're into the spiritual whether you like it or not, but you're into it more kicking and screaming. Then later on, you decide, well, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it in a more proactive way, and I'm going to take control over it. So that's an interesting sideline, too. But what I went talking about brains and having to do with hard spiritual work, you actually have to be very healthy. You have to, in other words, when it comes to the spiritual, you have to know about nutrition. You have to know about fitness. Have to know how to get yourself really healthy. And my meditative training techniques require that you have a certain amount of health, or you couldn't handle the stress related with them, because they put you in really intense spiritual states, emotional states. And there's pressure when you put yourself in these really rough states, and the body gets that tension and that stress, and it has to be healthy enough to handle it, or it won't work. It just won't work if you're not healthy enough. And it's sort of like the training is sort of like in stages where you gradually make yourself fitter and healthier as you go along. You can't do it immediately. You, you can start from a pretty unhealthy position and gradually work it and make tremendous progress over a period of time. And sometimes the people that start in an unhealthy position actually have the most motivation to go the fastest.
Right.
Whereas the people that have it, that the things are going too well, are not as motivated. So it's not so, being unhealthy to begin with can actually work to your benefit. You may have to put a few extra months into getting healthy to be able to get the program started, but it can work very effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And we recommend always to check with your doctor and get all your medical, physical health in line with new programs like
one of the things about the spiritual is it has a certain risk, and you have to tune yourself in well spiritually to handle that risk.
Right.
And you're on your own spiritually. That's the way it is. When you're pushing the edge, you can't go to another authority at that time and say, what do I do? Because it's up to you. You're different. You're a unique individual. So you're on your own when you're really pushed spiritually, you're on your own, and it's your risk. But it's always important to get information and understanding from all sources. And you should know about your physical condition of your body and what's going on with it, so you can make adjustments to what you're doing to take into account what's happening with your body. And science is very good at giving you extra information about things. I couldn't have developed my techniques that I developed if I didn't have skeptical science in my back of my head saying, well, if I do this, I better check it out because science will not like the medical profession or scientific community won't like where I'm coming from. So I better know what I'm doing and know where they're coming from so that I will have that insight while I'm developing it. And that helped me because a lot of times when you break the rules, you better understand the rules you're breaking because that makes you break the rules in a way that will make the broken rules actually more effective than the rules that they're replacing.
Yes, exactly.
Because you break the rules, but you're actually not you're getting better rules by breaking the rules. You don't want to break the rules and be like a criminal and just destroy yourself by
Right.
breaking the rules. But somebody has to do things differently because we're not doing that well spiritually in this world, and that's what my whole focus has been to bring something better when it comes to, in a practical sense, when it comes to spiritual training and developing people spiritually and having better spiritual theories to guide people.
Yes.
And so um, and I think that's pretty obvious. The world's a mess spiritually, even though there are people that think if you just tune yourself out to a lot of the things that happen in the world, everything's fine. And so, like, you just have to look at things from a positive perspective to the point that you see things through rose-colored glasses. And I don't see things through rose-colored glasses. And I have the character to see things head on, to see the painful, hard truth. And the truth, a lot of times, it's hard and painful. That's why spiritual training has to be so rough and torturous. And they talk about, I mean, I've heard people that do weightlifting and stuff like that saying their training is torturous. But the training for the spiritual has to be more torturous and rougher than any training that has to do with any other type of area because the spiritual just deals with the most traumatic and the most intense and the deepest issues of our times and the most trying issues and the trauma that's related to it. When you're dealing with life and death and grief
And emotion
and the disease and people dying of this and that, or people not having a chance to even make it in this world,
abuse,
and all this terrible stuff. That's what the spiritual deals with. It isn't an exercise program where somebody's just putting a muscle and get fit and this is torturous. They don't know torture until they start getting their emotions heavily involved. Yeah. And then when you're dealing with extremely hard emotions.
With things coming at you at all five.
But I mean, if you're going to be effective virtually in helping people that are going through terrible trauma, you have to be able to handle it yourself better than they can handle it. And that's not easy. That's why the training has to be really hard and challenging. And as I say, you can't do that really rough and hard, challenging training unless you do it smartly, unless you know what you're doing. You really know what you're doing because when you're pushing it that hard, you can destroy yourself and break just like that if you don't know that fine line that you're balancing on. And it can become a really fine line. But we're in a high-tech world. The fine line is played an awful lot when you're dealing with the sophisticated equipment in this atomic age we're dealing with. In other words, where little tiny mistakes can cause big problems. So dealing with the fine line of spiritual, it's just catching up to what we're dealing with in a lot of the technological fields and in science, where science is dealing with things that they better not mess up with because it's just really tricky. Okay. This is Positive Vibes Enterprise. The subject had to do with hard spiritual work. And I'm going to post a blog in the comment section and on this subject because I actually did a blog post before I came on here and did the video.
Yeah, so take a look at it and leave your thoughts and comments. And please subscribe. We'd love to collect more subscriptions and let more people in on this spiritual movement.
And this is Positive Vibes Enterprise, and thank you very much. We appreciate you watching.